video 嚟㗎啦。
I've worked with pictures and video for most of my career. As a journalist, I mostly write words to pictures. And when I trained, I knew I wanted to work in an area of news where freedom from bias underpins everything. And with video news, there's sort of less opportunity for interpretation and opinion. The video tells its own story. When I went on maternity leave, a colleague said to me, make sure you take lots of videos of the baby, don't just take stills. I must have really listened to his advice because in the 30 months we had together as a little family, we captured so much. Since Eddy was killed, these videos have taken on a new role. They've become our son's memories of his father. They're his only insight into the language that he spoke before English. Seren's first word was bicycle in Cantonese. I took this photo of us about 10 days before Eddy was killed. It's the last photograph of us as a family. I only took it because I was going out for the evening and I wanted to check my makeup. I had no idea how significant this image would become. Just 48 hours before Eddy was hit, we'd spent the evening on the water where we live. I made dinner for us to take up to a little sandy section of river with our friends. And on the way back, Seren was on the front of my board and he dropped his dinosaur in the water. Eddy and I both tried to reach it, but he was on his racing kayak and the competitive moment led to him capsizing. Seren and I laughed about it as we floated around, waiting for him to empty his boat. I pretended to take a picture of our son while actually trying to capture Eddy so that we could laugh about it later when he was seeing the funny side of things. This was the last picture I captured of my husband. The next time his image would be viewed on a screen was from a multicam setup on a Harrods van travelling in the lane next to him on the M4. As you can imagine, Harrods vans don't just have any old dash cam. They've got really high-spec technology with audio and multiple angles. Eddy was hit by a distracted driver as he queued at the back of standstill traffic on the M4. He was riding his commuter motorbike. The video that captured Eddy's death has had far-reaching implications. I'll only be able to touch on a few of them today, but what I hope to convey is just how important camera evidence is, not just for achieving a conviction, but how it can help the bereaved. If I describe two scenarios to you, one where there's video evidence of Eddy's death and one where there isn't, it's a bit like the movie Sliding Doors, but with no happy ending. There is, however, a scenario that is infinitely better, one where I am able to emerge from the ordeal significantly stronger. One of the most painful concepts when faced with the horror that Eddy, who was a phenomenally competent and safe road user, had been killed in this way, was that I would have to hear interpretations of what had happened to him. The thought of eyewitness testimony, no matter how reliable, was a real struggle for me. I needed facts and exact details. I needed science. I needed measurements. I needed the truth. When we fall in love or we have children, we just want to protect them. It's such an overwhelming feeling. If the person we love has been killed, that feeling of seeking justice for them is an extension of that need to protect. The thought that there's also an offender in the equation who is likely to lie about what's happened feels like an additional attack on the person that you love. The driver who killed Eddy began his interview by lying. That was until he was shown the video. A video of Eddy that showed what would later be described in court as exemplary riding. It showed Eddy slowing to a stop around 5 metres behind the car in front, and it showed the driver slamming into Eddy at speed. And on further viewing, it revealed a van travelling in the lane next to the offender with the same logo on its side. Another van from the same company. They were work friends. They think the driver was distracted away from the road for at least 16 seconds. And that was enough. It was enough truth to stop anyone from being able to add another interpretation of what happened. The CPS then made a quick decision to proceed with the most serious charge of causing death by dangerous driving. The driver entered a guilty plea at the earliest opportunity. I am quite sure that without the video evidence, the case would have gone to trial. A traumatic experience in itself. Add into that, I was trying to raise a 2-year-old on my own while commuting to my office on the other side of London several times a week. I think a trial would have finished me off. A judge was able to view all angles of the video alongside the forensic investigator's report in order to sentence the driver. And these are just the very basic outcomes of that footage. They're the outcomes that we assume are the most important in a road death. But for me, it had other purposes too. Obtaining footage at an early part of the investigation allowed the civil case proceedings to begin. The video was so damning and clear in its terms of liability that there would be no disputing it. As many Road Peace members know, the civil case is extremely long and painful, but it's a practical step that helps people like me survive financially. If I'd been unable to return to work, I don't know if I could have afforded to stay in my home. And one of the reasons our son has stayed so utterly secure since Eddy's death is that we stayed living in the place that we love, in the unique and adventurous outdoor life that we'd chosen for him. But what happens to the family who are left trying to prove the truth? What happens to the kids that are forced to move because there is no financial compensation for them when a case falls apart? What level of stress does that take a grieving and traumatised family to? I also want to talk about the psychological impacts of there being video of the end of my husband's life. The concept might seem horrific, but actually it gave me a level of control that I needed. Because the driver had entered a guilty plea, I was able to choose not to watch it. I was then able to ask every single question I needed answers to. I still wanted to know angles and speed. I wanted to know where Eddy hit the car and how he hit the car. With knowledge of what was in the footage, I was able to spend time with Eddy's body and my aunt, who's a trauma consultant, and turn over every possible stone to feel assured that Eddy didn't suffer. I also need to be able to answer Seren honestly when he asks me details about the crash, which he does already. Had there been no video evidence, I would have had to rely on snippets of information from strangers telling me how my husband met his death. That video actually gave Eddy a level of dignity that he was denied in so many other aspects of his death. The footage of the crash made the criminal proceedings as bearable as they could possibly be, and that's a scenario that truly allowed me to stay sane. The alternative would have put me in quite a vulnerable position. I was living on my own with a 2-year-old, with no family close by. If I was unable to cope, what kind of pressure could that have put on other services and charities? If I was left fighting for justice, I don't know if I could have come out the other side. I have a level of clarity over Eddy's death that's allowing me to build a new life. I'm angry and I'm desperately sad, and I will always fight for the areas of the system that are wrong, but I will also focus on the positive changes that we can make. Just as the videos that we took of our life are part of our story, the video of Eddy's death plays its part too. My son may choose to see it when he's older. He probably won't, but at least he gets a choice in a life where so much has already been taken from him.